The metal pressed cold against my chest as I slid the key into the front door. For 18 months, I had carried the picture of this house in my head. The chipped white paint, the creak of the porch step, the smell of lavender sheets waiting upstairs. I imagined Daniel's face when he saw me. I imagined his arms around me. Instead, I heard laughter. A woman's laugh, low and familiar, floating from our bedroom. I climbed the stairs, heart pounding, boots heavy against the wood. And when I pushed the door open, there he was. My husband. And beside him, tangled in my sheets, my cousin Marissa. People often imagine soldiers as unbreakable, steel in uniform, all grit and no softness. The truth is, we're just human. We carry family photos in our helmets, scribble grocery lists in our notebooks, and count the days on scrap paper like children waiting for Christmas. I was no different. My name is Captain Sharon Mathias, U.S. Army, 34 years old, daughter of a mechanic and a schoolteacher. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina where summer nights smelled of honeysuckle, and everyone knew your business before you did. I enlisted at 21, straight out of college, thinking I'd serve for 4 years. 13 years later, I'd survived 2 deployments and 1 IED blast that nearly took my leg. The Army had given me scars, both seen and unseen, but also a sense of purpose I couldn't imagine living without. Still, purpose doesn't keep you warm at night. Daniel did. Or at least, I thought he did. Daniel and I met in the most ordinary way. At a grocery store, of all places. He reached for the same jar of pasta sauce, and I laughed because neither of us wanted to let go. He cracked a joke about it being fate. I rolled my eyes, but I gave him my number anyway. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the type to fill a room with noise. He was steady. At least, that's how it seemed. For years, that steadiness anchored me. Whenever I boarded a plane back to base, he was the last face I saw. Whenever I returned, he was the first one waiting at the terminal, arms stretched wide, bouquet in hand. I clung to those memories during my last deployment, more than I'd like to admit. I kept a ritual overseas. Every morning, before the sun turned the desert sky pale pink, I'd lace my boots with hands that sometimes shook from exhaustion, and I'd whisper his name, just his name, like it was a promise to myself. Survive this day, Sharon. Survive it for him. In my cot, a single photograph lived under my pillow. Me, Daniel, and Marissa, my cousin, my childhood shadow, my sister in everything but blood. The 3 of us grinning in my backyard at a 4th of July barbecue. Marissa had her arm hooked around Daniel's shoulders, her smile wide, her eyes glinting. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Family. That's all she was. 18 months is a long time to imagine home. I pictured Daniel mowing the lawn in the old baseball cap he refused to throw away. I pictured Marissa dropping by sometimes, laughing in the kitchen while they waited for me to return. I trusted them both with every thread of my being. That trust was the blanket I wrapped myself in when the nights turned violent, when mortars screamed overhead and dust filled my lungs. I thought, one day, you'll be back in your house. You'll smell lavender in the sheets. You'll sit on the porch swing with Daniel, his hand around yours, steady as ever. The metal they pinned on me before I flew home felt heavier than the wound in my side. A purple heart. They said it was an honor. To me it was a reminder. You made it back. You're alive. Go live. On the plane home, I pressed my forehead to the cold window and imagined his face at the airport. Would he cry when he saw me? Would he stumble over my name, too choked with joy? I bought a little gift at the terminal in Kuwait, a silver chain with a compass charm. For Daniel. So he'd always find his way back to me, I wrote on the tag. My body ached, but my heart sprinted ahead of me. Every thought, every heartbeat, rushed toward that front door of our house. I had no idea that the homecoming I dreamed of was already gone. Marissa and I had been inseparable since childhood. Our mothers were sisters, and they used to joke that God gave them one soul and split it between 2 daughters. Growing up, she was at my house more often than her own. We wore each other's clothes, swapped homework, whispered secrets under the covers. She was the daring one, always ready to sneak out, climb fences, chase trouble. I was the cautious one, the one who double-checked locks and carried extra flashlights. But together we fit. She was family in the truest sense of the word. When Daniel came into my life, It never crossed my mind that he and Marissa would get along too well. Of course they would. She was charming. She was funny. She could talk a wall into laughing. I thought it was good for Daniel, who was quieter, more reserved. If anything, it comforted me, knowing that when I was gone on long deployments, Marissa might drop by, keep him company, help with the house. That's what cousins do. Looking back, there were signs. The first time Daniel and I argued about something small like money or the army moving me again, Marissa showed up at the door with pizza and beer before I even told her. He texted me, she said casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He didn't want you stewing alone. I didn't question it. I thanked her. I hugged Daniel for thinking of me. Another time, when I was on leave between deployments, I caught a fleeting look between them across the dinner table. It was nothing obvious, just an unspoken exchange, like they'd already shared a joke I wasn't privy to. But when I asked, Marissa waved it off. Sharon, you're paranoid. You've been living in combat zones too long. Relax. She kissed my cheek. Daniel stayed quiet. And I believed them. Because trust wasn't optional for me. It was oxygen. Before my last deployment, Daniel promised me we'd start trying for a baby when I got back. We sat on the porch, my head against his shoulder, as fireflies blinked across the yard. He rubbed circles on my palm and said, "You've given everything to this country, Sharon. When you come home, it's time to live for yourself. For us." Those words carried me through hell. When my convoy was hit, when I was bleeding into the sand and praying my tourniquet would hold, I thought of that porch, that promise, that future. I clung to it like a lifeline. But life at home was moving without me. Marissa had recently gone through a breakup. She called me crying one night overseas, her voice grainy on the satellite line. I comforted her, even as mortars rattled the sky. "You'll always have us," I said. "You'll always have Daniel. You're not alone." And she wasn't. What I didn't know was that my absence had opened a door. Little things, like Marissa helping Daniel paint the spare room, or staying over after too many glasses of wine, turned into something larger. They built a rhythm together in my absence, a rhythm I didn't hear. The truth came crashing in the moment I opened my front door that morning, metal still pinned to my chest. I heard the laughter first. That's what struck me. It wasn't guilt or hushed whispers. It was joy. Marissa's laugh, free and careless, like she had every right to be there. I climbed the stairs, my boots heavy against the wood, and pushed open the bedroom door. The world stilled. Daniel was there, shirtless, his face drained of color the second he saw me. And Marissa, my cousin, my sister in all but name, scrambled to cover herself with my sheets. My sheets. No bullet, no blast, had ever knocked the breath from me the way that moment did. My chest tightened, my vision tunneled. I couldn't speak. I just stood there shaking while Daniel stammered, "Sharon, wait, it's not." But there was no version of that scene that could be not. I dropped the compass necklace onto the floor. It clinked against the hardwood, sharp and final. Marissa's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't reach for me. She didn't even move toward me. She just sat there, small and silent, wrapped in my life as if it were hers. All those years of trust, of loyalty, of love. I realized in an instant. They had been borrowing from me, piece by piece, until I had nothing left. And in that silence, I understood something chilling. Betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It only comes from the people you hand your heart to. I don't remember walking out of the bedroom. My body moved before my mind caught up. My boots hit the stairs, my hand gripped the banister. And all I could hear was my own breathing, ragged, uneven, foreign. Behind me, Daniel's voice followed. "Sharon, please wait." His bare feet slapped against the floorboards, desperate, clumsy. I didn't turn. I didn't answer. I just stepped outside into the morning light, the metal still glinting on my uniform, and sat down on the front steps. The same steps I had imagined us sitting on together, rocking a child to sleep, planning our future. The world looked exactly the same, blue sky, trimmed lawns, birds flitting in the trees. But everything in me had split open. Daniel came out, shirt hastily thrown on, eyes wide like a man begging for air. It wasn't what it looked like. I laughed. A sharp, broken sound I didn't recognize as mine. "Daniel," I walked into my bedroom. My bedroom. What could it possibly be, if not what it looked like? He knelt in front of me, reaching for my hands. Sharon, please. I was lonely. You were gone for so long. She was just there. Just there. I repeated his words, tasting them, letting their cheapness burn on my tongue. Marissa had been just there. And so had I. In deserts. In combat zones. In nightmares I never told him about, because I didn't want to weigh him down. But when he was lonely, he found comfort not in my letters, not in my voice through static, but in her arms. Marissa hovered in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale but not ashamed. Not enough. Her lips parted like she wanted to explain, to soften, but she stayed silent. She always had a gift for timing, knowing when words would damn her more than silence. Get out, I said, my voice low steady. It startled me, how calm I sounded. Daniel froze. Sharon. Not you. I turned my head, locking eyes with Marissa. My cousin. My sister of the heart. The girl I defended in schoolyards, the woman I comforted through breakups, the person I would have died for. You. Out of my house. Now. Her lip trembled, but she obeyed. She always obeyed when my voice dropped like that. She shuffled past me, down the steps, avoiding my gaze. I smelled my own shampoo on her hair as she passed. Daniel watched her go, torn between following and staying. And that choice, his hesitation, his weighing of me against her, was worse than any bullet wound I'd ever taken. I stood. If you leave this porch, don't come back. His eyes widened. Sharon, no. Please don't do this. I love you. Love. That word again. A word so easily spoken, so poorly lived. You don't love me, I said. You love the life I built. The safety I provided. You love that I kept the nightmares away so you could sleep. But when the silence got too loud, you filled it with her. He reached for me again. This time I stepped back. I fought battles you'll never understand, I whispered. But this is the one I won't fight. Not for you. Not anymore. And I walked inside, leaving him on the porch. That night, I sat alone in the living room. Uniform still on, medal still pinned. The compass necklace lay on the table where I had placed it, glinting in the lamplight. The irony was bitter. It was meant to guide me home. But home was gone. Sleep didn't come. My body was heavy, but my mind replayed every memory, every laugh, every lie. The years with Daniel blurred with Marissa's shadow, her smile at our wedding, her toasts at our anniversaries, her hand brushing his a moment too long. Had it all been building to this? Had I been the fool at my own table, blind to the truth everyone else could see? By dawn, a decision had hardened inside me. I couldn't undo what they had done. I couldn't rewind the hours, stitch up the betrayal, or scrub my sheets clean of their sin. But I could decide what came next. And I would not be their victim. The army had taught me discipline, patience, strategy. My life had been about survival, but now, it would be about justice. Not the kind handed down in courtrooms, but the kind that came from truth. Because if there was one thing I had left, it was the truth. And I would wield it like a blade. The morning after, my body felt like it was moving through water. Heavy, slow, every step deliberate. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. Daniel had gone, I didn't know where. Maybe chasing Marissa. Maybe sitting in his car, head in his hands. Maybe planning what to say to me when he came back. It didn't matter. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the metal still pinned to my uniform. I hadn't changed, hadn't showered. The smell of sweat and desert dust clung to me. But under that weight of exhaustion, a fire was starting. Small, steady, dangerous. I thought about the missions I had led. The men who trusted me to bring them home. The times when chaos reigned and I had to silence the panic, focus only on the next step. I remembered telling them, stay calm. Think. Don't react. Plan. That was the difference between survival and death. And that was the difference now. Daniel and Marissa had taken something from me. They had broken the home I dreamed of, poisoned the family I thought I had. But I was not powerless. I had tools they didn't. I had patience. I had discipline. I had the truth. At first, my grief begged me to scream, to smash plates, to tear the sheets from the bed and burn them in the yard. But a stronger voice inside whispered, Wait. Hold steady. Don't waste your ammunition. I thought about Marissa. About how she had sat at my table, how she had laughed with me, cried with me. I thought about the way she hugged me at the airport, whispering be safe. All the while, knowing she was already betraying me. And Daniel, the man who swore he would wait for me, who wrote me letters filled with longing, who kissed me in airports with tears in his eyes. Was it all a lie? Or did love simply rot, little by little, until loyalty snapped? It didn't matter. The reasons didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that they thought I would break. They thought I would disappear quietly, letting shame and heartbreak bury me. But I wasn't built for disappearing. I was built for fighting back. That night, I pulled out a notebook. Not the kind filled with hearts and daydreams, but the kind I used overseas, operational logs, mission notes, strategy outlines. On the first page, I wrote in block letters, Operation Truth. I listed names, friends, family, neighbors. People who had believed in me, supported me. People who had watched Daniel and Marissa smiling at each other, and thought nothing of it. They deserved to know. I listed resources, photos, letters, texts. I still had the messages Daniel sent me while I was deployed, swearing his loyalty, proof of his promises. And now, proof of his betrayal. I listed weaknesses, theirs not mine. Marissa's need for approval, her habit of oversharing. Daniel's fear of being seen as weak, his craving to be admired. Every mission begins with intelligence. And I was gathering mine. Somewhere deep inside, I knew revenge alone wouldn't heal me. But truth would. Making sure the story wasn't twisted. Making sure I wasn't painted as the cold, absent soldier wife while they paraded their love as fate. No. I would control the narrative. The army had given me medals, yes. But it had also given me clarity. Know the terrain. Understand the enemy. Strike when ready. I wasn't Daniel's broken wife. I wasn't Marissa's gullible cousin. I was Captain Sharon Hale. And I was about to teach them what loyalty meant to a soldier. As the days passed, the grief inside me didn't fade. It calcified, hardened, became a blade I could hold without bleeding. When I walked into town, people still greeted me with warmth, with pride. They didn't know. Not yet. And I didn't tell them. Not yet. I smiled, nodded, carried my grocery bags, all while rehearsing the truth I would one day lay bare. At night, the house was empty. Too empty. But instead of drowning in loneliness, I used it. I spread documents across the table, highlighted timelines, pieced together the cracks in their stories. I wasn't chasing shadows. I was building a case. Every soldier knows. The waiting is the hardest part. The silence before the strike. But it's also the most important. So I waited. I sharpened. I let the fire grow until it wasn't just grief. It was purpose. And in the silence, I made myself a promise. They thought they had destroyed me. But when I was done, it would be them standing in ruins. The first step was observation. I started small, blending into routines that made me invisible. I visited Daniel's classroom, by chance, under the guise of checking in. Noticed the way he leaned toward Marissa during parent-teacher conferences. The lingering glances that betrayed more than friendship. Every detail went into my notebook, every nuance cataloged. Next came digital evidence. Daniel's phone, carelessly left unlocked on the kitchen counter, became my window into their secret. Messages, photos, even a vacation itinerary they had planned behind my back, all neatly saved, time-stamped, undeniable. Each file I backed up, not out of revenge yet, but out of necessity. A soldier always documents. I tried confronting them once. Daniel and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, silence thick and suffocating. "Sharon, this is over," he said. "We can move on. Forget it." I wanted to scream. "Forget it." I whispered, my voice trembling. "You were in my bed. You betrayed my trust. And you want me to forget it?" He leaned back, shrugging. "It was a mistake. A lapse. You're reading too much into it." That was the first setback. I realized truth alone wasn't enough. People twist narratives. Memories fade. Emotions cloud judgment. I needed witnesses, corroboration. Proof that couldn't be denied. So I turned outward. I quietly reached out to neighbors, discreetly asking if anyone had noticed Marissa staying late. Daniel disappearing on weekends, the strange timing of errands. Each confirmation, each whispered observation, became another thread in my web. Then came the moment I nearly faltered. One evening, I sent a friend of Daniel's a message asking if he had any knowledge of their relationship. The response arrived almost immediately, a defensive, protective tone. "Why are you asking this now? Sharon, I think you should let it go." My chest tightened. For a moment, self-doubt surged. Had I misread everything? Had I become obsessed? My hands shook as I reread the old messages, the flight itineraries, the screenshots of texts. No. The truth was still there. Solid. Undeniable. Another setback arrived in the form of Daniel himself. He started avoiding the house, taking longer at work, sometimes texting to claim meetings or errands that were obviously fabricated. I felt the weight of my isolation pressing down, but I also saw an opportunity. Desperation makes people careless. Slowly, I built my plan. Nothing dramatic. No public accusations yet. I would lay the foundation carefully. I compiled emails and receipts into a single folder, organized by date, time, and context. Photographs were numbered. Texts were printed and highlighted. I prepared my evidence as meticulously as I had prepared for combat missions. Each piece had a purpose. Each file a place in the sequence that would eventually reveal the full story. There were small victories along the way, too. One neighbor admitted, quietly, that they had seen Marissa and Daniel together at odd hours, driving off to nearby towns. Another friend confirmed overhearing a private conversation where Daniel laughed at the idea of me returning early, joking with Marissa about waiting it out. Even with evidence piling up, the tension grew unbearable. I could feel the fire inside me, but I also knew patience was key. Acting too soon risked everything. Missteps could allow them to twist the story, destroy my credibility, or worst of all, leave me standing in public shame. So I waited. I sharpened my resolve, letting the pieces fall into place like soldiers moving into position before a final strike. Every night, I reviewed my notes, rehearsed what I would say, anticipated their defenses, prepared counters. The setbacks became lessons. Every attempt to deny or dismiss the truth only strengthened my strategy. Every wavering friend, every slip of Daniel's behavior, became a reminder. Precision matters more than passion. Patience more than anger. And slowly, inexorably, the plan took shape. By the end of the month, I was ready. Not with weapons. Not with shouting. Not with spectacle. But with facts. Proof. And the confidence that no lie could survive when confronted by the truth. It happened at my mother's birthday dinner. A neutral ground, a familiar home, full of people who loved me without knowing the betrayal that had been quietly eating at my heart. The dining room was bright with hanging lights, the table heavy with roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and pies lined up like soldiers on parade. Laughter echoed around the walls. The air smelled of cinnamon and roasted herbs. Daniel and Marissa arrived together, casually holding hands, pretending nothing had happened. Their smiles were confident, arrogant almost. They thought they had hidden the truth well enough, that my absence had rendered me powerless. I watched them from the doorway, my heart thudding, my palms slick. The metal pinned on my uniform felt heavier than ever. The compass necklace sat on the table beside me, gleaming under the light. A reminder of the journey, the survival, the betrayal. I waited for a lull in conversation, then stood. My chair scraped softly against the polished hardwood. The room quieted. Every eye turned toward me. "I need to say something," I began, my voice calm, steady, almost surgical in its precision. "Before we cut the cake." Daniel shifted, confusion flashing across his face. Marissa's hand clutched his sleeve. "Sharon, what do you mean?" she said, voice tight. I placed a thick folder on the table and opened it. Inside were printed emails, receipts, photos, and screenshots. Every piece of evidence meticulously arranged. The first photo was of Daniel and Marissa at a local cafe during one of the weekends I had been away, his hand resting casually over hers. The second was a hotel receipt. The third, a message from Marissa to Daniel. "Can't wait for you tonight, winky face." Gasps filled the room. Forks clattered against plates. My mother's hands flew to her mouth. My father's jaw tightened, fists curling under the table. Daniel tried to interject. Sharon, please. You don't. I cut him off, my voice rising slightly, the calmness never breaking. Don't try to explain. Each word a measured strike. While I was bleeding in the desert, surviving attacks, counting the days until I could come home, you were building this. Behind my back. In my bed. My home. The one thing I trusted completely. Marissa's face drained of color. Her lips quivered, but she said nothing. Not a single word to justify herself. I opened the next section. Emails, texts, timelines. Each proof meticulously annotated. Every friend who had confirmed their clandestine meetings, every bank transaction that had tipped me off, they were all laid bare. A distant cousin whispered, "Dear God." Daniel's hands shook. He looked around, seeking allies, pleading silently for someone to contradict me. But the room was silent. My truth had weight. My proof had precision. Marissa finally spoke, voice trembling. "Sharon, I didn't." "You didn't what?" I asked, taking a step closer. "Protect family? Honor trust? Respect a home built while you were absent?" Her eyes welled, but no words came. Daniel sank into his chair, defeated, the arrogance gone. The mask had slipped, revealing the man who had believed he could manipulate, deceive, and emerge unscathed. The room began to murmur, whispers cascading into a low hum of judgment. My uncle's eyes bore into Daniel. My father's hand rested on my mother's shoulder, a silent gesture of support. My siblings exchanged stunned looks. I closed the folder, letting it thump onto the table. Silence hung, thick and heavy, before the weight of reality sank in. No one defended them. No excuses. No justifications. Only the truth, pure and undeniable. And in that silence, I felt something strange, a release. A lightness that had nothing to do with joy, but everything to do with reclamation. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the soldier returning from battle, not the betrayed wife, not the cautious cousin. Just Sharon. Strong, steady, present. Daniel and Marissa left shortly after, their departure quiet, shamed, defeated. My family watched them go. Expressions a mixture of anger, pity, and disbelief. I stayed at the table, my hands folded over the compass necklace, letting the adrenaline fade. The fight had been won, not with violence, not with yelling, but with truth. And that truth had leveled the ground beneath them. The days after the revelation were surreal. Daniel and Marissa were gone from my life in every sense, but their absence felt like an echo, reverberating through every room of the house. I would walk past the bedroom and catch myself hesitating, fingers brushing the doorframe, remembering what I had walked into, and the cold clarity of betrayal that had met me there. I spent the first week just moving through the motions, cooking meals I didn't eat, folding laundry with precision, walking the dog along the quiet streets of our neighborhood. The rhythm of everyday life became a kind of therapy. Even small, mundane tasks carried weight, grounding me in the reality that I was still here, still whole, still capable. Friends called, checked in, sent texts of support. Some had known, some had only pieced things together after my confrontation. But their kindness reminded me that life didn't end with betrayal. People didn't turn on a dime, but they could choose to stand with you, or walk away. I realized who had walked with me and who hadn't, and I carried that knowledge like armor. At night, sleep returned in fragments. I didn't wake screaming from nightmares of sand and fire this time. Instead, I traced the contours of my life, imagining what came next. For the first time in months, I considered my future with intention, not fear.